Riding the reset, it is dumb, and this is not a training concept that I would feed into people's heads. Now, before you guys get upset, let's talk through it, what it is, why I think it's dumb, and I'm sure I'll get a lot of feedback in the comments about this. So, riding the reset, what am I talking about? So, let's say we take Mr. Glock here. I'm out training. Boom, I fire the gun. That shot goes off. Riding the reset, I'm just going to minimize the amount of travel forward, release the trigger just to the point where I hear that audible click, and now the trigger's reset. And from there, I'm going to go ahead and press through for the next shot. There's various justifications given for why this is a good thing to do, but from what I've seen and experienced, it is not a good concept and not a good paradigm to put in your head for training. And there is a certain logic to it. It's not like the people that advocate this are dumb. There's some logic to it, and it works to a certain degree. But in a sense, that just makes it kind of worse because like it gets you to some level, and then what I've seen is that this type of thinking ends up getting in the way. So, what are the good points about this, or what's the attractive part of riding the reset? First, obviously, if there's less travel, like my finger moved less if I just go to the reset point. I could let my finger out further to where, I mean, let all the slack out of the trigger, or even take my finger off the face of the trigger while I'm shooting. Obviously, there's less total movement if I let the trigger out just to the reset point. Less total travel in people's heads. Yep, now I'm going to be able to shoot faster. That's one thing. The other thing is, if you have people having trouble with accuracy, what they need to do, of course, is pull the trigger straight without moving anything else. One mechanism that helps them do that, and it's not just riding the reset, but any sort of like training paradigm that puts your head onto your conscious mind is now on your hand or on your fire control. That's going to help you. That's going to help you shoot accurately as long as your conscious brain stays there. So you'll have people that shoot, we're going to ride the reset or let the slack out, and they're then consciously paying attention to the trigger, right? So I'm not saying this is a good thing to do, but if you're inaccurate, you're having problems pulling the trigger straight, then you're like, oh, okay, yeah, pay attention to the reset. Now you're paying attention to the trigger. And now, for a lot of people, in a lot of cases, they'll start shooting the gun more accurately. Okay, so this is the appealing parts of riding the reset, and this is what gets people going. Okay, now what I see, what I run into in my courses is I'll take very good or experienced shooters, and then what I'm there to ask them to do is, hey, you have to shoot faster now. You're in B class USPSA, you're going to shoot M class speed. You're, whatever level. You're here, I'm going to ask you to shoot here. And it doesn't matter how good you are. Like you could be M class, you could be G. I've had national champions come through my classes. It's like I'm going to ask them to shoot faster. That's what I'm going to do. And in those circumstances, you start to see the limitations of different training paradigms or different techniques. What I see typically from people who've been trained to ride the reset is a couple things. First, when you're asking them to shoot really fast, like boom, 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 like they'll occasionally fail to reset the trigger. This is not a problem for every one of them, but for some of them, it's like you'll see, like, hey, shoot faster, and they get their hands tense, and they're so acclimated to letting the trigger out just to the point of reset that they short stroke it a little bit sometimes and end up on a dead trigger. That happens a lot. We call that trigger freeze. It places that it's a speed limitation on your shooting. Now, what I'd recommend is just let your finger fly off the trigger so you're sure you're resetting it. I think that's easier. What you'll find is that people who shoot very fast, especially at close ranges, shooting at high speeds, the idea that their finger doesn't come off the trigger or that their finger is only traveling minimally, this is not really the case. So if you look at anybody, even people who are like, they will tell you, they'll swear up and down, like, nah, bro, just ride the reset out. You'll put a camera on them and watch, and their fingers flying off the trigger at the close range, high speed stuff. Like, people tend to do that, even unwittingly. And that's true of reset riders. But the ones who really try to ride the reset, they end up a lot of times with trigger freeze. Now, another problem with the reset riding sort of thinking is it places this speed limitation on people shooting, again, kind of unwittingly. So let's say I get really fast with this. It's like shoot, reset, click, click. Like I get really fast at this technique of letting out just to reset, pulling the trigger and shooting. I get really good at it. And let's say I can shoot 22, 23 splits, 15-yard targets and hold the A zone shooting just that way. It's like they click, press, click, press, click, press back in, click, press back in. Now, I've seen a lot of guys like this, like master class, good shooters, very good. But to get to the next level, it's like, all right, you got to go faster. And then when they need to go faster than this reset riding technique that they've trained in, it's tons of problems. Like they said, they essentially need to start over with their trigger control because it's like they've trained themselves that it's like this pace, it's this way. It's like click, roll, press, click, roll, press, click, roll, press. And they do that faster and they get that to where they train that in, and that's like their accurate shooting. Again, as soon as you ask them to go faster or make them shoot in a way that they're uncomfortable, that like the riding the reset thing really does fall apart. It ends up being a speed limitation on their shooting. And it's something that they build in. A lot of guys, like they know that they're going to push down on the gun if they shoot a certain speed. So they just back off a little bit from there. And then that's the speed they shoot. And then as soon as you ask them, like, hey, go up to here, it falls apart again. That is something that you'll see, especially with the reset riding kind of school of thought. Now, what do I think you should do in terms of trigger technique? I think simple is good. Like what I'll tell people to do is like you want to squeeze through or roll pressure onto the trigger in a kind of a fluid motion. It doesn't really matter too much if it's light or heavy or there's a lot of travel. I'm just going to go ahead and roll pressure through the trigger and try to keep everything still. Like just move my finger and hold my hand still. With this kind of thinking, I'm not very sensitive to the specific like type of trigger or how heavy it is or whatever. I'm going to make it work with pretty much anything. Just go ahead and squeeze through the trigger. If the shooting is close and fast, I should be able to move max speed like as fast as I can move my finger, and there shouldn't be too much movement in the actual muzzle of the gun. That's one thing. The other thing is, as I get further and further away from the targets, the shooting gets more and more difficult. Like if I'm shooting at 50 yards, I can just roll through the pressure a little bit more slowly and carefully, and I'm going to get the right result on the target. So I don't like this, just go to reset type of thing because I see that causes problems. Instead, I like the simple, hey, roll right through it. If the targets get more and more demanding, okay, do that a little bit more slowly and carefully, but you're still, at the end of the day, just going to roll right through the trigger. All right, so that's my opinion. Reset riding, it's not for me. I see it cause problems. I'm sure you guys have different opinions. Like I said, that gets people paying attention to their trigger control or getting them paying attention to the trigger. So at the lower levels, I see why people say that. They're like, oh yeah, just hey, ride the reset, just let it out to the click. People start paying attention to everything they're doing and they can shoot the gun straight. The problem I have with it again is the limitations that's going to place on you further down the road when you try to get better. So that isn't a way I would train people. I wouldn't tell them just to let it out to reset. I think it's dumb. Like I said, I'm sure you guys have different opinions.